Oh, hello and welcome. My name is John Ryan with Broadsheet. Tonight we're having a special show about the Mother and Baby Home Report, which today the Minister for Children, Roderic O'Gorman, said will be published on January the 11th next year, January the 11th of 2021. And this is now almost coming up to 6 years since the Commission was kicked off following in the wake of the discovery at Tuam. Joining me tonight are three very, very special guests. Breeda Murphy, who is the PRO of the Tuam Mother and Baby Home Alliance, and Eunan Duffy, who was 47 when he discovered that his birth mother had been resident of the Marian Vale Mother and Baby Home in Newry, County Down. And joining us, Eunan is up the north, and joining us from, is it New York, Karen?
Yes.
Joining us from New York is Karen Trimnell, also an adoptee from Marian Vale, who is in possession of 3 birth certificates, which we'll get to in a moment. And Eunan and yourself, having both come from Marian Vale, you've known each other, well, you both discovered around the same time, you know, that you had come from, that you had been adopted or trafficked from Marian Vale.
I had known my entire life.
No, but you were both late to yeah, sorry.
Yeah, so I got in touch with Eunan, what, about 4 years ago? 3 or 4 years ago?
4 years ago,
because I discovered, it was after the Tuam incident, and I discovered a lot of documents that my mother had at the same time. So I got in touch with him because he was in charge of this program.
Right.
And that's my history with Eunan.
And Eunan discovered he had been adopted from Marian Vale when you were 47. Eunan, you discovered it when you were to get married in Poland, and you had to find your birth cert.
That's right. Yes, had to get my full birth certificate from the General Registry Office in Belfast, and came back that I was on the adoption register.
And I just want to come back to through Eunan, then you could find you. Karen, I'm just going to come back to it in a second. And Breeda, before we come up to all that, the reason we have Eunan and Karen is that Northern Ireland or any of the mother and baby homes run in Northern Ireland are not covered in the report coming out next year.
Do you want me to answer that?
That was for Breeda, yeah, sorry.
Okay, sorry. No, they're not covered at all. And Ireland at the time of mother and baby homes, when there were really, you know, 1961, let's say, when it closed in Tuam, at that stage, and right throughout, Ireland was regarded as, one country. The 6 and 26 counties did not exist from the diocesan point of view. So trafficking is a very big issue that is being looked at in the report, I'm told, but the report itself only deals with 14 mother and baby homes and 4 county homes. So Eunan has got some terrific information with regard to how the states worked, how children and mothers indeed were trafficked. I mean, mothers left the south to give birth in the north and came back without their babies, while their babies were then routed back down to the south and routed onwards, as Karen will be able to testify there shortly.
Yes, Eunan, just to get the chronological order, when you found out you were 47, you became then an activist for both mothers and the children. You started campaigning yourself, Eunan, is that right?
That's right, John. Yes, obviously, because it was one thing finding out they were adopted, but obviously it's then the discovery of the circumstances and the situation of the adoption itself. In my case, obviously, and likewise with Karen, we both came from the same mother baby Magdalene institution that was based in Newry in County Down. So then I obviously set about, that was run by the Good Shepherd sisters, yes, for a period between 1945 and 1984. So I obviously set about then trying to find my birth mother, and then in the meantime then had got in touch with some other campaigners in North here on the same issues, and basically since then have been trying to hold Protestant Catholic churches to account on the respective governments in the North and South as well.
And that was the organisation that you contacted, Karen?
Yes.
And but your discovery, you didn't get your documents from, you got a number of documents, but they were, how can I put this, inconsistent.
Yeah, I had, so from the time that I was a child, I had one of those birth certificates that had my name on it. I had one of those birth certificates, that's the one that is official, that's from Texas, that has my adopted parents' name on it. Yeah. And then when I was in my mid-40s, my aunt discovered a box of papers and pictures that belonged to my mother, and she sent them to me. And I found more birth certificates and also the consent forms from the adoption. And I kept those. They were of interest to me, of course. But it was when the Tuam incident happened and I was appalled. I realized that more of these things were going on in the world, and I really wanted to see some official accountability, the way that children and their birth mothers had been treated in the past and how they're being treated now, trafficked across country borders, used in servitude and even in sex slavery, sold essentially as if they were only chattel and not like they were human beings, for no other reason than that their mothers were not socially sanctioned to give birth at the time that they did. So this is the sort of thing that I was interested in contributing to the awareness about and hopefully the elimination of.
Your mother was from Dublin, so she came.
My adopted mother was from Dublin, yes.
No, but your birth mother, is that right? No.
I don't know. I don't know anything about her.
All right, but
except for her name.
Okay. You had aunts in Dublin, though, is that right? You lived a year in Dublin.
When I say my aunt and my mother and my father, I mean my birth mother, I mean the woman who gave birth to me.
Okay. Right.
So my mother means my adopted mother. My father means my adopted father. My aunt means the sister of my adopted mother. Okay.
Mary Stewart is your mother's name, or the name given.
My birth mother's name, yes.
Your birth mother's name. Hunter is your adopted name. You were lucky in the sense that they were very good parents, as we spoke.
Yeah. Yes, except that they were older, and then they died when I was a teenager. So, you know, that was unfortunate, but they were good parents while they were alive.
Right.
Very loving.
And we spoke earlier, as regards the trafficking nature of it and the legality of the adoption. Do you feel it was a legal adoption at any stage?
Oh, it's so difficult to tell from the documents. I would have to be, I suppose, a lawyer. But it just seems to me to be for a lot of agencies contributing. Who has 3 birth certificates? I mean, honestly.
Well, you know, con men, I guess. You know, I mean, I suppose which one? I mean, do you get problems at airports or anything, or applying for passports or anything?
I've had a passport since I was an infant, since I came to the United States. So I just always have used that. It's always been valid.
Yeah, and the nature of your adoption, it seems there's letters to the Mother Superior, references from colleagues, or in fact, your father's boss, I think, was it? In the Hilton Hotel. So it seems to have been above board in that sense, but with all that,
I mean, they didn't hide it.
And there was another aspect about ongoing maintenance that there were calls.
Well, now this is something that might just be rumor, or that might just be completely made up. But there is a story in the family that the Mother Superior from the mother-baby home was calling my mother to kind of blackmail her, to suggest that my birth father might be interested to know my whereabouts, and that a donation wouldn't go amiss.
Okay.
Essentially.
Okay. And that was just a family rumor, was it? Within.
That was just a rumor, yeah. I mean, there's nothing in the documents that substantiates any sort of payment, ongoing or at the time.
Well, right. And when you contacted Eunan, and when you got together with Eunan, I mean, like, did you realize? I mean, what was it like? Could you explain? Was it more of a bureaucratic thing, or was it emotionally sort of devastating?
I wouldn't say it was emotionally devastating. I was really angered more by the situation when I found out what was going on with the way that children were being treated as disposable. And since I had some documents that would contribute something to the knowledge about what was going on, even if it was just trafficking across borders, I thought at least I can contribute that. You know, it's, but it's something at least.
Have you desire to meet or to not? But anyway, I'll move on. Eunan, when somebody like Karen contacts you, what is the procedure? How do you go about investigating her case?
Well, first of all, you know, looking at Karen and her information, you know, it would be a fairly educated, I suppose, guess that you would say that anybody having 3 birth certificates, it wouldn't be entirely legal, to say the least. So it's definitely plausible that there's been some kind of criminal, indeed illegal activity that's taken place here. The very fact that, you know, trafficking is taking place in the fact that her mum was taken from the border from the south to the north. She was institutionalized there until Karen was born. And then obviously there was different methods of facilitation then to get Karen to the south of Ireland, and then obviously on then to the USA at some point. So we can call it whatever we want. You know, we regularly hear of euphemisms and a lot of these sort of illegal activities being downplayed, but this is effectively what we're talking about here. You know what I mean? This is human trafficking in its best form. So I suppose it's taking somebody like Karen on board. You know what I mean? I've established many contacts now with adoptees and birth mothers across the world, including in America and Canada, South Africa and Australia. And basically we're now trying to, I suppose, compose a whole dossier on the trafficking aspects, which have been clearly kept off the table on the agenda for every type of investigation that there's ever been in the south of Ireland or the north of Ireland. And I suppose the same would apply to England and Scotland as well, who of course have had child sex abuse inquiries going on now at the moment as well. In the north we had the historical institutional abuse inquiry, and it did take into account the child migrant scheme of the 1950s, where children were sent to Australia in particular. But you know, we know that Dr. Bernardo's and the Salvation Army contributed to basically in around 500,000 babies sent to various parts of the world at different stages, basically from the 1900s and even further back. So I suppose we're trying to get the two governments now to recognise and acknowledge some of the criminal activity that's went on. And this all leads on to obviously access to information and how a lot of people now are in a complete vacuum and a limbo sort of state where they're trying to find out where they in fact came from and what's truth, what's not truth. And discover all the nature of everything that's going on.
You've got the added problem then, the mother and baby homes in the north were run by Salvation Army, Catholic Church and the Church of Ireland. So it's, you didn't have that element really in Breeda in the south.
No, but we have evidence of trafficking. In 1951, there was an article in October 1951 in the Irish Times saying that the previous year, 500 children left Ireland for adoption abroad. Now, it wasn't illegal at that stage. Adoption didn't come in Ireland until 1952, and it didn't make law until 1953. So there were cases, there's certain pieces of evidence within the records of state that say, for instance, we must not upset the archbishops with regard to adoptions. And there's various pieces I've sent to you, John, that maybe we should put up on broadsheets that show the evidence. And with regard to Tuam, there was in 2012, when they were investigating for the McAleese report, one of the principal social workers discovered a large archive of photographs, of documents related to adoption. And she notified her superiors, and they said this must go all the way up to the minister. So it's highly likely that in 2012, and even when the commission or Tuam story broke in 2014, and following on from that, the establishment of the commission, it's highly likely that the major stakeholders, players of church and state, actually knew what may be uncovered. And I think the one thing I certainly thank Judge Yvonne Murphy for is going into the site to investigate the remains of the children, which up until that point, people were quite critical, saying those are famine burials. So having the knowledge that the children were from the era of the home, 1950s, I never have ever said the children were buried. They were discarded and in a cruel manner without any ceremony. And that is a stark reality when you look at how in all of the mother and baby homes, the religious themselves were buried. The children missing from Besborough, from Castle Pollard, from Shanross Abbey. Each mother and baby home deserves proper scrutiny. And our voice for Tuam is equally being carried for them, and as far away as Newry. I mean, the great thing to come from this is the friendships that we've built up. You know, Eunan and myself talk regularly about the trafficking issues, and it is a feature of Tuam. It's a feature of every institution, certainly every mother and baby home within Ireland. I'm quite convinced. The absence of evidence is not evidence of absence. You know, and there was one particular chap, Kevin Battle, who did a DNA test in Oregon in the United States and found it led him all the way back to Ireland. And he had said that his relatives, his parents, paid $1,000, which was a lot of money then, $1,000 for him. So maybe that was why consecutive payments, you know, because the parents were, it is alleged, reached out to for continuous donations, but the mothers were as well after leaving. So it was very much about the money. And I think if we follow the money, we will find the answers that we need to get.
Yeah, on the documents that we read over the next few weeks, hopefully before the 11th, that we can do a couple of other shows with Eunan as well, that we can sort of bring the North and South together and have a look at the whole picture before the report does come out. Are you, in terms of yourself, Karen, I mean, firstly, do you think you'll be able to establish who you are? For sure.
I'm sorry, in what sense?
Well, I mean, which cert is yours? Which one is the real birth cert?
Oh, oh, yeah, I suppose the one that gets me working in the world. I mean, it's a practical matter, really, isn't it? Having a birth certificate.
No.
I have three. Some people don't have one at all. I don't need it to establish my identity for myself. So, I mean, I think it's just
And Eunan,
bizarre.
is Karen's situation quite common in terms of adoptees?
Oh yes, it is quite common, and in fact, you know what I mean, as Karen has just brushed on there, you know what I mean, some people don't have a birth certificate at all, and that's happened, you know what I mean. I know adoptees who, for example, were allowed to join the Irish Army, and a priest signed off on it without this guy having a birth certificate. So, you know, the illegality also comes into Karen's case here when you have the adoptive parents registered as the natural birth parents, which again is illegal and criminal, and that doesn't matter what legislation of what decade that applies to. That is illegal, as is having three birth certificates with different information on them. You know, that's an untenable situation. That's not, you know what I mean, that's evidence of the very fact that, you know, basically there were a number of facilitators that basically wanted to get children like Karen out of the country when there was a supply and demand chain, especially as, you know, at the start of the 20th century, I suppose, the infant mortality rates for illegitimate babies in particular, you know, were basically allowed to die until, I suppose, there became a supply and demand for children. And the religious congregations, etc., basically found a niche in the market where they basically said, you know, we don't have to let children die anymore. You know, we can actually make some money out of this here. We can commodify. You know, we've now got a business model, and instead of taking these children off these women that have supposedly fallen in society, we can now start selling these children off and actually, you know, make extortionate amounts of money. And Mike Mullet in his Spanish Baby book talks about the Catholic Church making in between 30 and 50 million pounds between the 1940s and the 1960s. So, you know, he also talks about lawyers selling kids. There's one case he talks about in 1951 where a lawyer sold 100 kids for $3,000 each, which is worth about £10 million now. And it all goes back to the same thing, you know, that basically once they became, you know, the Americans especially, Britain, for example, brought in a law in 1948 that foreign nationals were not allowed to take children out of the country. Americans obviously had restrictions in terms of adoption in their ages, that people over a certain age, I think it was around 38 or 40 years of age, couldn't adopt children. So Ireland was the go-to place. You know what I mean? So basically, you could sideswipe and swerve every kind of legislation and law that there ever was. And the 1952 Adoption Act that Breeda talks about there, which was only enacted in 53, basically it legitimized a lot of this trafficking because, of course, what it said was that it was okay to have laws in place for legitimate children, but not illegitimate children. You know, and of course, a single mother and its child was not defined in the Republic's constitution as a family unit. So again, they weren't protected by any kind of family protection under the Constitution in the South of Ireland either. The Catholic Church obviously was worried about proselytism and children being taken into, you know, the Protestant religion. So they would do anything and everything at all costs and go to every length possible to make sure that if children were being adopted, that basically, as long as they went to a Catholic family that agreed to bring up the child as a Catholic, then that was basically, you know, the green light to take the child under any circumstances. And in regards to America, for example, they would, the Protestant churches, for example, insisted on prospective adoptive parents actually meeting the child, whereas the Catholic Church didn't do that and didn't stipulate that as part of the criteria for the adoption. So there's a whole raft of issues here, you know, that basically need explored. And some of the situations where you're talking about Karen and our three birth certificates, which one's correct, you know, none of these things will ever be found out unless there's some kind of robust investigation. And it's obviously, you know, a reason why nobody in Ireland, north or south, wants to touch the trafficking issue, because not only will it incur a major can of worms, but when you talk about the number of complicit players that facilitated these adoptions and the trafficking between, you know, the governments themselves, the churches, GPs, solicitors, private adoption agencies. I mean, it was absolutely, you know, such a huge network of people, all involved in a very complicated system and a network that basically outreached all over the world.
Yeah, Breeda, you sent me a document today, and I'd love to share it over when we do another show, from the Mother Superior pleading with the Archbishop to let her adopt these 9 children, I think. Now, from the letter, she's so desperate that you assume she's already made the deal, that the payments have been made as such, and it's quite an eye opener.
Yeah, I think there are a number of state papers, and I have to thank people like Conall O'Flaherty and Liam Hogan, historian. Liam has been very good, and one of the first pieces of evidence I found from him was in 1925, the home in Tuam opened, but within the first year of it opening, they were already trafficking the women without any legal authority to do so. Women were being trafficked with a nod from the local authority to the Magdalene Laundry. And there were occasions when the Mother Superior in Galway was asked as to how long a woman would stay in the Magdalene Laundry. And she, you know, brushed aside and said, some of them stay for life. And Maeve O'Rourke, who's done terrific research, again, Justice for Magdalenes, will tell you that, you know, that we do not know the full story, even from the Magdalene women. We know that we have their testimonies, and we've had the apology from State, and we will certainly get an apology, I would think, within the next month from State for mother and baby home survivors and families of the lost children and the mothers and all affected. But I wonder how sincere apologies are when we found that after Enda Kenny gave this heartfelt apology in Dáil Éireann, certain younger women were not included in the redress scheme, and it took the ombudsman to intervene and, you know, give out to the state to say this is not the way to treat these people. Again, we had the same with Louise O'Keefe. She had to take her case to Europe and was being told that she would lose her home. The late Bridget McCall, the same way. It appears to be that women in Irish society at a particular time did not matter. They had no rights. They had actually, Irish women pre-foundation of the Free State had more rights, in my opinion, than they had within 5 years of the, you know, 1925 or thereabouts. Their rights appear to be stripped away, particularly in relation to sexuality or in relation to morality, or what was perceived to be the only way to get on in Irish society was that you had to conform. And these women suffered desperately. And I do hope that the true story within the report, which is due to be published, that it contains the testimonies of some of the 500 have given evidence to the Commission, and there are 60,000 documents. And I would hope that those are included within that report, because otherwise it will be a useless exercise.
Well, the report, one of the it's so delayed. It's much delayed every year. We expect it to come out, and then the victim survivors can only seek redress once the report is out. So it's like a horrible catch.
Yeah, it has been delayed 4 times. Yeah, 4 times, John, it has been delayed continuously. And some of the reasons for the delay were actually due to government departments not complying with the Commission and providing the information they were seeking at times. That's what the Commission came back with. But the Commission did have the opportunity to hold their their meetings in public. It would mean whereby if a survivor such as Philomena Lee, who did want to give her testimony in public, it would mean that the evidence for that would be in front of the three who made up the commission, and that we would have access to it. Everybody would have access. We would no longer be holding things in secret and waiting for somebody to make a judgment. We could all know about it. And I think all of society deserves that, to heal and to move on and to really celebrate the lives of survivors who have survived, and memorialize and recall the children who did not, and their mothers. Many mothers left this world too soon as well within the homes.
Indeed, and essentially it's trafficking, you know, and it's a crime. We were probably Romania and places like that caught up with us. I mean, we were the leaders in this, selling our children, basically, you know. Karen, just from an American, I mean, what is your perspective on all this? I mean,
well, somebody, either those birth certificates forged or people were just issuing them, and that shows some sort of government complicity with child trafficking. And this is in developed countries. This is something that is startling, and I think it's something that should be exposed and made known to people. And
I mean, I asked, do you ever think you'll find the truth of what happened? Eunan, your story is you found your birth mother, and would you like to relate what happened? I mean, it wasn't like a movie.
No, well, there's, suppose when your quest is to try and find your natural biological birth parent or parents, you have to, as best you can, try and prepare yourself for all the eventual, I suppose, outcomes that there possibly can be. But no matter how well prepared you are and how many people you talk to about, you know what I mean, the possible of a double rejection, or the very fact that you might not find your birth mother, your birth father, they might be of a very limited, you know, physical and mental capacity. They might have already have passed away. They might want to have a relationship in complete secrecy with you. Some adoptees don't want that. Something you have to bear in mind here is that there's a difference between wanting contact and a relationship with your birth parent or parents, and actually wanting to know your whole natural identity, your heritage, your culture, where you came from, and of course your biological history as well, which is of course very, very pertinent and relevant to your own situation, because of depending on what age you are, you might have imminent health conditions. Your own children, obviously, they have relevance to this. So there's an intergenerational legacy to all of these issues, and obviously, there's no guarantee that you're going to have a connection with your birth mother. There might be all sorts of, you know, ramifications and, I suppose, allegations of what happened, what didn't happen. Will you ever know the truth? Your birth parent might have suffered undiagnosed PTSD, on all sorts of mental health issues. You just don't know. So there's no guarantees of a connection. There's no guarantees of a positive outcome. And, you know, there's so many things that are up in the air at the end of the day, John, you know what I mean? And it brings into, you know, all the issues we're talking about here. You know, Karen's situation as an American there, for example, taken to America, and a whole raft of adoptees were never naturalized as American citizens either. So, you know, there's been a number of deportations in the last 20 years of adopted people that found out just by pure accident that they weren't actually naturalized American citizens, whether they even committed a criminal act and actually found that this person's not actually American, and were then deported. You know, and then of course there's a number of adoptees all around the world, including Ireland and America, who will never ever find out that they were adopted. the access to information debacle that we've had recently in the South applies to, you know, the adoptee and the birth mother diaspora that we have all over the world. People that would, birth mothers that through legislation and sometimes by their own choice, you know, can't look for their birth child, for their child and find out what happened to them. This brings into question enforced disappearances. What's happened to the birth mothers and the children that nobody knows of, whether they're dead, buried somewhere in a mass grave. You know, these are highly complex issues here that have a whole range of ramifications for not just the people involved, but, you know, society in general.
Thanks, Eunan. That's really well put. We're going to do some more shows before the 11th. Hopefully, Eunan, you'll join us, and Breeda, you'll join us. Karen, it's an absolute great pleasure to meet you. Sorry if I appeared insensitive. It must be a great pleasure anyway to meet you. And
yes,
thank you.
Thanks for having me.
Hopefully, we'll chat soon once the report is out. Maybe you'll come back and we'll talk.
Yeah, certainly.
Thank you very much, Karen, and Eunan.
Okay, thank you.
And Breeda, thank you again for everything and all the background stuff. And I think we'll look at the confidentiality the aspect of it, the Northern Ireland aspect. I think that there's a few elements that we can really get our teeth into and tease out. So thanks a lot, and until next time, thanks.
Thanks
John. So much, John. Have a good evening.
Good to see you again. Thanks, Breeda.
Thank you, Breeda. Nice meeting you.